Greg is also due to visit border facilities in Yuma, Arizona tomorrow. Greg?
Jonathan, thanks very much. Joining us now with more reaction is author of How Do I Tax Thee? Kristin Tate, along with the author of Dark Winter, retired Brigadier General Tony Tate, and Fox News contributor Robert Jeffress. Good to have you both, all three of you, with us. Kristin, let me start with you. The president's critics have long accused him of, exaggerating the threat. And now, of course, we see the tragic shooting of a police officer the day after Christmas by an illegal immigrant. And the sheriff said this was preventable, but California's sanctuary laws made the tragedy possible. He's right, isn't he?
The sheriff is absolutely right. This cop-killing migrant had been in the country illegally for years, had been arrested numerous times in the past, and was the member of a gang that is notorious for murders and human smuggling. He shouldn't have been here in the first place, and California's sanctuary laws, which prevent local officials from turning illegals over to federal officials, he was still here. Had he been deported, this cop would be alive today. Greg, how many more Americans need to lose their lives before sanctuary states like California start enforcing federal laws? And I place the blame for this chaos and devastation right at the feet of the Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, who demand open borders while living in gated communities where they're completely separated from the devastation that their policies bring into this country.
General Tate, this is California cities and, in fact, to some extent, the entire state aiding and abetting criminal behavior. And I've cited it many times before. There's actually a felony federal statute that says you cannot harbor or shield illegal aliens. And if you do, it's 5 years behind bars. And if somebody's killed because of what you did, you could serve up to life behind bars. Don't we need to start prosecuting some of these people who are aiding and abetting?
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. We need to start prosecuting, and then we also need to sort of rewind the clock, and we need to get these people out of the country. We need to deport these criminals that are being caught. The sanctuary cities need to be done away with. This is a real problem, and all the crocodile tears that the left are crying over children at the border and so forth, they're not crying today over this officer's child that is now going to live without a father. Officer Singh's child and wife. And, it's a travesty what's happening at the border and in these sanctuary cities. And border security is every bit as important to national security as anything that we do overseas. And so we got to fight the enemy on their 5-yard line, and we got to fight them on our 5-yard line as well.
Pastor Jeffress, there's this new political cudgel that Democrats and the media are using, and it's, in fact, religion. I want to play a clip and get your reaction. Here it is.
Jesus Christ, who had to flee for his life with Mary and Joseph. Thank God there wasn't a wall that stopped him from seeking refuge in Egypt. Thank God there was an administration like this, or he would have too have perished.
What would Jesus do? That's where Jesus would be. That would be the issue. If you read the New Testament, if you read the Gospels, that's exactly what Jesus would be concerned about.
I told him about Solomon, King Solomon, when he was to become king of the Jews. He prayed to God. He said, "How can I ever follow King David, King of the Jews? I need you to give me great understanding and wisdom, Lord." And after he prayed and prayed and prayed, God came to him and said, "Solomon, because you did not ask for longevity, great wealth, or vengeance against your enemies, I will give you more wisdom than anyone has ever had."
Well, I suspect, Pastor, forgive me for saying so, but I think religious doctrine and religion and faith and grace are all being exploited here for political purposes. What do you think?
Well,
Well, it's being perverted. You know, 364 days a year, the left usually hates the Bible, but they use the Bible on Christmas to pervert the Christmas story to push this open borders policy. And look, Nancy Pelosi says a wall is immoral. Even the Pope says it's unchristian. But I remind people that in the Bible, God's the one who commanded Nehemiah to build a wall around the city of Jerusalem to protect the citizens. The Bible even says heaven is going to have a wall around it. Not everybody's going to be allowed in. And I think, Greg, it's wrong to demonize President Trump for doing what the Bible commands him to do as the leader of government, and that is to protect our citizens. He is doing the right thing. He shouldn't be demonized for doing it. There's nothing immoral or unchristian about building a wall to secure our borders to protect our citizens.
Kristin, as Jonathan Hunt's report indicated, hundreds, if not thousands, of detainees with children are now being released due to a judicial decision. And so literally left at bus stops in the cold. I don't know how in the world they can be absorbed in that region, El Paso. But isn't this a situation and a court decision that actually incentivizes illegals to bring children with them?
Oh, yeah. Central American migrants have learned now that if they come across the border with children, they are far less likely to be deported and far more likely to be released on U.S. soil. That's why we're now dealing with a record number of asylum seekers. But here's the thing. When these thousands of migrants are released, we don't have anywhere to house them. These people are roaming the streets with nowhere to go and nothing to do. This has become a real crisis. And the question is, what do we do now? Are we supposed to just build a bunch of low-income housing for every migrant in the world who wants to come here? I mean, there are tons of homeless veterans already here in this country. We already have enough problems here, and now we have the entire third world who wants to come to our country with their children and be taken care of. At some point, there are limits to what we can provide for everybody.
General Tate, is it a fair bet that most of these people will not be coming back for their court hearings?
I think that's a bet I would take, Greg. And, you know, what you see here, and I listened to your previous segment, we have this flow coming across the border. As the commentator just said, they bring children, using them as human shields. It is just despicable the way the left champions these people to come across the border and undermine our laws. We are a nation of laws, and we have to enforce those laws. And you know, we have national security issues, and in these caravans, there are known terrorists. When Vice President Pence comes out and says, you know, there are several hundred known terrorists and criminals in the caravan, you don't think that we have, you know, people walking in that caravan listening and determining who's there? You bet we do, and we're not going to blow the sources and methods, but we have good intelligence on what's going on, and you know, we need to start enforcing these laws and sending the people back and defending our own goal line here. As we fight overseas also.
Pastor, I've got about 30 seconds left, but I want to give you the final word.
You know, today, Greg, I preached the funeral service for the chief of police of one of our cities here in the Metroplex, and I reminded hundreds of police officers that the Bible says they have been chosen by God to protect those who do right and punish evildoers. And I think it's wrong for us to vilify police, ICE officials, or the President of the United States for fulfilling the God-ordained purpose of government, and that is to create order and to protect us against evil.
Kristin Tate, General Tate, Pastor Jeffress, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Coming up next, an incredible example of media bias like, you know, you didn't think it happens. We're going to tell you all about it after the quick break.